computer.
Okay. All right, well, let's kick off. And Anna, if you can keep an eye on the waiting room and just let in any others who appear. So thank you all for coming along this morning. My name is Lizzie Boyle. I'm a town councillor in Frome in Somerset. I believe this is the third of these sessions, unless I've lost one somewhere. The third of these sessions that we've run, which are really designed originally designed for sort of town and parish councils to share ideas, projects, experiences, issues, challenges, creative things around climate emergency, mitigation of climate change, adaptation projects, sustainability projects, because there's so much going on that it's great to share. And we branched out at one point. We had some districts and boroughs, which was quite exciting. And we've expanded across not just Somerset, but I know there's often a good cohort of Dorset authorities represented. We've had people from across the southwest, but also hello Fiona, hello Dorset, but also from the east of England, I believe the Midlands, Greater Southwest. So yeah, they've been good sessions and well attended. I'll also, many of you will know Anna already. Anna, do you want to just wave and introduce yourself for those who don't?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Yeah, I'm the resilience manager at Frome Town Council. So I've been sort of leading on the climate emergency programme over the last, well, I mean, really over the last 5 or 6 years. And I was going to do a little update today about some of our transport stuff that we're doing. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So etiquette and housekeeping and all that sort of stuff. If you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself, I always forget, but it just means we avoid any feedback. If you have an emergency, if there's a fire alarm, it's in your house. I believe it's still the kind of case. So please deal with any emergencies that you need to, and don't worry about switching off your video and disappearing off to go and sort out any issues. We'll have a little bit of an update in this sort of format to start with, and then we'll probably spend a little bit of time in breakout groups and smaller groups so everybody gets a chance to chat to each other and share ideas. We're probably a small enough group that we could actually just do a little round of introductions before we start so everybody knows who everybody is. So if I could, I'm going to call you out in the order that I can see you on my screen, and if you could just say hello and who you're representing today, that would be lovely. So the first person I can see is Mike Brownlow.
Hello, I'm Mike Brownlow. I'm a town councillor in Brewton.
Lovely, welcome, thank you. And then I can see Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Sanderford. I'm the Assistant Clerk and Projects Officer in Street.
Hello, Mark. And then Paul Wharton.
Hi, yes, hello everyone. I'm Paul Wharton. I'm a town councillor in Frome, as is Lizzie, with a keen interest particularly on transport and cycling in particular.
Thank you, Paul. Pete West.
Yeah, I'm actually from Dorset as well. I'm Director of Dorset Community Energy, so I know Anna through that. But we're setting up a sort of Dorset Climate Action Network for town and parish councils and community groups. So I had a Zoom link from Belinda Bowden from Lyme Regis. So I thought we'd just listen in, and Carol's in the same position, just to see how you're getting on there, anything that we could learn from, really.
Fantastic, thank you, Pete. And now I've got the first of, I think, 3 Claires. Claire Crainer Buckley.
Yes, hello everyone, I'm Claire Crainer Buckley. I'm the Environment Champion at Castle Carey Town Council. And I've previously actually worked for Bristol City Council in their environment team about 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm interested in all things to do with the climate emergency.
Lovely, welcome Claire. And then I've got Joe.
Oh, good morning, everyone. My name's Joe Parker, and I'm with Wells City Council, which is parish council level. Thank you to Sarah Britton. I don't know whether she's joined the call because she forwarded on the email from Anna.
Great, thanks, Joe. Welcome. And then Helen.
Morning, everyone. My name is Helen Finer. I'm the Wild About Trees Projects Officer for Frome Town Council. Nice to be here.
You're just your intro just needs to be, I'm wild about trees, surely. That's it.
I am
Yeah.
wild about trees.
Yeah.
Who isn't? Who isn't?
Thanks, Helen. Then I have Claire Churchill, but I can't see her at the moment. So I might just skip on to Polly and we'll come back to Claire. Oh, yeah.
I am here.
Oh.
I just don't have a picture.
Okay. Hello, Claire. You're
I'm
very foggy.
Yes. I'm the parish clerk for 6 parish councils between Salisbury and Shaftesbury.
Wow. Well, good for you. Fantastic. And welcome. And Polly.
Yes, I'm Polly Benfield from Lyme Regis, again in Dorset. And True and Lime Green is our local environment group, which I'm involved with.
What a great name. Thank you. And then Carol.
Oh, hello. I'm from Dorset, Chesilbourne. I'm a parish councillor responsible for the environment, and I'm also working with Pete as a very, very small contributor to the project for the Dorset Community Action Network.
Lovely, thank you. And then Fiona. So I think we had a little Dorset run here now.
Yes, hi everyone, I'm Fiona. I am a town councillor in Gillingham and lead member of our climate emergency subcommittee, and also one of the founding members of an environmental group in the town, which we started last year, called Greener Gillingham. Nice to meet you all.
Fantastic, welcome. Just to let you know, Fiona, you were a little bit crackly. So when we're in the discussion, you might find it easier to switch off your video, but you're fine now, but just in case. And then Ewan.
Okay, thanks.
Morning all, I'm Ewan Jones, I'm Chair of Brewton Town Council in Somerset.
Fantastic, welcome Ewan. And then Claire Radcliffe.
Oh, hi, I'm Claire and I'm the Deputy Town Clerk at Gillingham Town Council, and I'm helping Fiona out with our climate change group, which is we've got plans for to restart after all the COVID bits and bobs. So
fantastic, thank you, welcome. And then Derek.
I just had job connecting with you. Probably noticed that I didn't have video, and then the sound wasn't there, but I've just logged on and off a few times and it's sorted it. But I'm chair of Wharton Underedge, Gloucestershire Climate Change Group. I'm a town councillor here as well, so I'm pushing environmental issues and installation of solar and electric vehicle charge points and things like that. So we're gradually making progress on the projects we have lined up.
Great, good for you. And then last but not least on my screen is Jane.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, yeah, sorry, I haven't got video. Yeah, I'm Resilience Officer for St Cuthbert's Out Parish Council, which is the circular parish enclosing the City of Wales.
Fantastic, well, welcome. Great to have you all here. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Anna for a bit of an update of what's happening in Frome. As I said earlier, if you do want to raise a project or just update us on a project that you're working on, put a note in the chat. There's already a few people who've said they'd like to tell us what they're up to. And we'll come, once we've had Anna and perhaps Helen give us a little update on Frome action, we'll come out to everybody else for your updates. So over to you, Anna.
Great, thank you. I'll just share my screen if that's okay. Here we are. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Okay, I'm just going to start. Oh. There we are. So I think last time we met, is it starting? So I've talked about some of our climate action work already, and obviously one of the opportunities that's come out of the whole sort of COVID crisis has been particularly around transport, and that's an area that we we've been working on, and we've done some projects, which I'll talk about briefly in a moment, but really it just feels like this is sort of the key opportunity now to really sort of look at how we can have some transformative change to enable people to sort of be more active and healthy and cut emissions and air pollution. So I'm going to talk about our School Street trial pop-up. So in terms of what's happened already, we did a big survey, community survey, sort of asking people about the whole sort of coronavirus crisis and sort of, what's next? What is the vision for the future? And we found that actually cycling was the second most popular area out of all the different things that we asked people about. So transport was the number 2, it was the second most important activity that people wanted the town council to be doing. Supporting businesses was number 1. But when we looked in more detail at the transport issues, usually it's parking, but this time it was actually cycling and making the road safer, which was brilliant. And obviously that's been reflected around the country and nationally as well. We also did an interactive map, which again I mentioned last time, with Commonplace, and we've had about 2,000 comments on that map. And the idea is that it's an open map that anybody can sort of highlight and pinpoint different areas where there's sort of issues or pinch points, or where they feel that they need safer walking and cycling routes. And it's a really good tool because it also enables people to sort of agree with comments and sort of build up a sort of evidence base around what people feel are the issues in the area. And then over the last 3 years, so this would have been the 4th year if we've done it, we've been working with a community group called Free Missing Links to do this school active travel School Active Travel Challenge is actually rather than the plan. And so that's involved working with most of the schools in Frome. And I mean, it's quite a simple concept really, but it's just a big push on active travel. And what we've done is provide all the schools with a simple postcard, for example, and they've got the teachers and the students to fill that in the week before the travel challenge and then fill it in again the week after, so that we can sort of monitor how many more people are walking and cycling. And then we have prizes, and there's like competitions between the schools, but also within the schools. And we have had lots of things like BMX stunts and crazy bikes and lots of things, and Mojo Moves doing these amazing like sort of 80s keep fit classes and things like really, and lots of smoothie bikes, and just to make it sort of interesting as possible. But anyway, with that program, we found that every year on average active travel increases by about 20%, and actually year on year the active travel, the increase actually stays to some extent. So on average it's about 10% a year. So that shows, although that does take quite a lot of time to manage and organize and get into place, and a little bit of budget in terms of providing the prizes and things, actually, even without any infrastructure change, just through promoting it, you're actually seeing quite significant change. So sort of building on that, we felt that, we worked with a transport consultant called Jess Reed, who is a specialist particularly in terms of sort of enabling areas to go car free or low car. She's worked in Holland and Denmark and other places where they've got incredible cycle routes and really where people are prioritised over cars. So when the sort of coronavirus stuff started, was happening, and we sort of looked at what opportunities there could be in Frome, we just said to her, right, okay, what can you see? What could we do? And initially we thought, we'll just do a little cycle path there, but actually she said, what they find is that although cycle paths are brilliant, and obviously as a cyclist myself, I love cycle paths, often the impact is not as big as you might think. What happens is that actually the existing cyclists cycle more, but it doesn't necessarily encourage more people to cycle. And actually what we need to do is look at sort of, more transformative projects that kind of readdress the balance around car dominance. So she'd also had experience of working with Bristol Council, for example, developing their playing out strategy, and also some experience of developing these school street projects. So that's what we've decided to do. And the idea of a school street, I think I'll talk about it in a minute, but it's basically that you restrict access to the areas around schools, but people can still, local residents, the buses, school staff, everybody else can still get into the area. You can still cross over very carefully in the area. So it's not about blocking off anything, and it's not about, saying no, it's about saying yes to active travel and getting people on the, out and active. And, you know, I'm sure you're aware, you know, the whole thing around travel has changed a lot over the last few months. And actually, since 27th of July, walking and cycling are finally defined as transport. I didn't realise they weren't before. But anyway, apparently that's significant in terms of national priorities and things like getting funding via Somerset. There's also been obviously the funding tranches that national government have been supporting and as part of this programme. So the idea with the School Streets project is that the Town Council itself is going to fund the first initial pop-up, but we've applied for funding to significantly sort of scale it up and put in nice planters and things, which we should hopefully hear about in the next few weeks. So we've done a scoping exercise, and yeah, the context is really, you know, so lots of people have been saying, well, how can you can't suddenly do this, and what's happening? And actually, in lots of places, particularly sort of bigger cities like London and Bristol and things, this is not a normal transport project, and these are not normal circumstances. These new powers enable transport authorities, highways authorities, to go in and just say, right, we're going to make this area safer. This is a pop-up. It's a temporary. It's like a consultation in action kind of thing. So, because how do you know before you've tried it, really, obviously, and people are resistant to change. So the idea is we put it in place, people try it. If it doesn't work or people don't like it, we can tweak it, we can change it, and we can even take it away if people really don't like it. But the whole idea is that, yes, it's under these emergency powers, and it links in with coronavirus in terms of enabling more people to be active and trying to reduce the burden on the NHS, because there's a direct link between things like obesity and health issues and coronavirus. So yes, I've sort of referred to this a little bit, but why is this important for Frome? Well, you know, in terms of the health stats, 1 in 3 children in Mendip show indication of metabolic disease. 1 in 2 children are not meeting basic health requirements for being active, and I'm sure this is the same in many other areas around the country. 2 in 3 adults in Mendip are overweight or obese, and you know, these do all have an impact in terms of COVID risks as well. I mean, obviously it's not just COVID we want to address, we want to enable the whole community to be more active and healthy. And in terms of climate, passenger cars are the single largest contributor to UK carbon emissions, depending on which analysis you look at, but obviously they're very significant. And towns in Mendip, you know, are highly car dependent, as in many places around the country. So this is why we've got the emergency response. And this is a slightly silly slide that the transport consultant put in, but she was looking at like how far animals travel. So a sheepdog apparently does about 100 kilometres a day if it's left to run in the fields and things. Hedgehog does 3 kilometres, which already is pretty good. And actually that is what the chief medical officer's recommendation for being active every day. And it's like, well, if a hedgehog can do it, surely we can. And if you look at Frome in terms of hedgehogs, you know, Frome is only 1 hedgehog across. It's only 3 kilometres. It really is, you know, it is possible to get from one side to the other, but it is also hilly. So we, you know, we don't need to be too blasé about just saying, right, you've got to walk and cycle. But, you know, can we create this, you know, positive atmosphere and area so that people can really start getting on their bikes and walking and cycling and scooting more? And this is, for me, this sort of sums it up. And I know, for example, being a local parent myself, you know, that I've got a neighbour at the end of the road and she drives her child to school every day, even though it's about half a mile. You know, and that is the thing. Once it's one of those catch-22s. You know, the more people drive, the more it feels less safe to walk and cycle. So hopefully, by, you know, enabling lots of people to not park in the area and just creating this feeling of safety, then we'll enable more people to walk and cycle. So again, I've mentioned this a tiny bit already, but it's basically a School Street is a corridor that prioritises safe walking and cycling. Residents can still park in front of their house, school staff can still access the school, emergency vehicles, tradespeople, buses, everyone, people with disabilities, everyone can access, not everyone, people with exemptions like that can access. And really, the other thing is, it's not really in London, for example, they've done it quite strictly and they have like vehicle license plate recognition. For us, we're not doing that. This is a trial approach and this is kind of self-monitoring. You know, and if you're really running late or you're feeling unwell or you've got tons of stuff to carry, you know, it's not the end of the world if you drive to the area and park. It's about a general principle of, please, if you can walk or park and stride or just walk and cycle, please try and do that. And the other thing is that, although I'll show a map in a minute, you know, lots of people have said, oh, you're blocking the roads, you're blocking the roads, but actually we're not. And you can get across the roads at certain points carefully, but it's just about, yeah, everyone being more respectful of, well, prioritising walking and cycling over cars, which is quite a culture shift for some people. And it's not a play street, so it's not about closing the road completely. So this is the map, and actually if stroke when this goes ahead, this will be the largest school street programme in the country. At the moment it links with there's three main schools: Oakfield School, which is a middle school, which has about 800 students, Trinity School is about 300 students, and Critchell School is a special needs school. There's also Avanti Park, Avanti Academy or Avanti Park on the other side of the of the town. And the idea is that we really just wanted to create this safe route all the way down between the schools. So this area anyway is already, you know, really extremely congested, and there's no real parking. It's all on street parking. People, it is, yeah, and kids come across between parked cars. It really is a sort of accident waiting to happen. So there's already, you know, it's a really significant issue. But the idea is the reason to extend it was to create this sort of corridor to enable people to then access the local park, and there's lots of people that live sort of around the Butts area, and that then also can hopefully access this nice corridor to get to school. But also it's not just schools. The idea at the moment is that this will be a 24/7, so always it will be in place at all times. And lots of people have said, oh, why is it 24/7? I can't understand it. Why isn't it just school times? But the idea is that, you know, we want to create a permanent safe space for everybody. You know, we want everybody to be able to walk and cycle. And it's not just about school children and families. It's about, you know, older people, which actually is even more important for older people to get more exercise. You know, let's create a nice route that everyone can enjoy. So it's school streets, but it's hopefully for everybody. And the idea is that rather than saying road closed, like you see it in the bottom picture, you know, we want to say, actually, it's road open. It's to all these things. And the idea is that it's prioritising active travel and people over cars. And I think, do I talk about the different things? So initially, with the pop-up that we're doing in the next few weeks, we'll be having some little metal signs that say road open, and yeah, that's kind of basically it. But there'll be about, I think, 50 or 60 of those signs all around the area, and also saying that cyclists have priority and please don't overtake cyclists and things like that. If we get the funding, hopefully we will, we'll then, and that people are starting to be reasonably happy with it, we will then put in these nice planters that you can see on the left-hand side, and we'll have those sort of dotted all the way along the area. And as you can see, you know, the road isn't blocked, you can still get round, but it's just about creating physical, not a barrier, but something you have to go around, so that you kind of think, oh, right, I'm in a different space and I need to be a bit more careful. So in terms of the implementation, we've been doing a bit of, I mean, normally with these projects, as I said, you know, because it's this emergency situation, you know, they have just been sort of implementing these things. Obviously, Frome Town Council normally does a lot more sort of consultation and sort of working with the community. So we've tried to do a bit of that. We've distributed about 2,500 leaflets. We've got an online survey. We're working with the schools to get everybody's, I mean, the schools themselves are keen on it, but they're obviously getting the parents to fill in questionnaires and surveys. And the idea is that, yeah, it'll be a 12-week trial. Initially, it was going to start at the beginning of the term, but actually it's now going to start a few weeks later. But I think that'll be fine, actually. And we will have a stakeholder group, and we will fine tune it each month. You know, people, you know, we'll be monitoring the impacts and then seeing how we can develop it further, and then hopefully doing the 18-month trial. And then people will love it so much that it will become permanent in June 2022. And that's an example of our leaflet. Right, and that's it. And I have to say, you know, like it's been quite an interesting process already, because normally when we do projects, you know, things like, I don't know, like the share shop, the community fridge and solar panels and stuff, everyone's like, oh, we love this, and it has been quite different. People going, oh, this is a terrible, lots of people are saying it sounds great, but obviously lots of people as well are saying, oh, you're blocking the roads and it's going to be a nightmare, and how can the town council do that? And for me, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's quite a different kind of atmosphere. But, you know, we do need to try these things, and you know, the car has dominated our lives for the last 75 years or so, and all sort of government policy and funding and everything. You know, we really need to address this, and hopefully everybody will appreciate it. Or not everybody, you'll never please everybody, and that's what the transport consultant has said. You know, like there will always be a backlash, but you know, the idea is that most people can enjoy it and experience it, and it becomes a positive thing for people. And, you know, we'll start here and then hopefully we'll expand to other areas and other schools. But yeah, does anyone have any questions at all? Is anyone planning any similar projects? Or Joe, I think you've got a question.
Yeah, there's certainly something we were looking at in Wells, vis-a-vis making it more pedestrian friendly. I'd just be really interested in if it's possible to get the contact details of Jess Reed.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'll put that in the chat in a minute. Actually, she's brilliant, and she's really, yeah, very, very calm and just like, yes, don't worry, it'll all be fine. And yes, there's always going to be people that don't like it, and we just have to go through that. And I know that other, you know, speaking to Kelly Knight at Mendip, you know, it's been there has been some amazing, you know, you kind of think, oh, cycle routes, everyone's going to love that, and then actually there's been, you know, some quite strong feelings that have come up against it. So it's about sort of getting the balance, and really for me it's about trialing it. Let's try it, see how it goes, and then, you know, if it is terrible, then yeah, let's tweak it, change it, you know, see what we can do. But hopefully we can get, you know, the main thing is to just enable more people to travel actively and get healthy, and yeah, integrate 5 minutes of exercise into their lifestyles. Yeah.
I find it's an incredible thing that, you know, 6 months ago or 7 months ago, if somebody had said to you, right, everybody is going to have to stay at home and not see their families and not do things that they intended to do and follow very strict rules, you'd have gone, oh, no. And we managed it for a while. And now it's sort of, okay, what we're asking you to do is, instead of driving 10 minutes to school, just to walk, or drive to somewhere else and walk your child the rest of the way, or join a walking bus scheme. And it's just, wow. Yeah, there's been some quite profound response, quite deep response. And I think a lot of the time it's because people sort of think, oh yeah, this is a city type thing. This is what they do in London. And in London, you've got choices about how you travel in terms of public transport. So it's not a car-based transport system, whereas where we all are, it's very much more, I think, more car-dominated. And people feel this kind of the right to drive, which is strange. Mark?
Yeah, I just wondered, I mean, we've got, recently we've had a pedestrianisation within High Street, but we had quite strong feelings from some residents in smaller streets surrounding the High Street, because there was a lot more traffic than using the smaller roads. So we've actually taken the decision to take away the pedestrianisation from last Friday to open it up again to traffic. The main reason was sort of safety concerns, because there were some cars that were still going through the High Street, and there were some pedestrians that were using the road, and it caused issues. So I just wondered whether the roads that you're closing, or not closing, but restricting movement of cars, are they roads that would predominantly been used just at school times, or are they through traffic roads as well? So I'm just thinking that if we tried a similar project here, I'm just concerned that some of the roads near the schools are actually quite busy roads for throughput traffic, and therefore it would force traffic down other smaller roads that aren't or less suitable for volume traffic.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's one of the reasons that we chose this area, is that there are lots of other sort of side routes that people can go down. So it isn't, the idea is that we're hopefully not going to be diverting, you know, huge amounts of traffic to other areas, and you can get through. I mean, Oakfield in particular, I'd say, is it's a sort of minor road that you can kind of get through, but there are other ways to go through. So they're not really through roads. The bit that is a bit controversial is the top of Nunney Road and Critchell Road outside the two schools on the corner. That actually is the main, well, not the main road, but it's a direct link with the village of Nunney. And I'm going to the Nunney Parish Council meeting on Monday to talk about it. But there is also, but there is actually a bypass from Nunney that takes, I think, 1 minute longer if you drive along there and round, and that was why the bypass was put in. I mean, this will actually reduce the volumes of traffic going through the village, so, and it will create an amazing, you know, walking and cycling route between the village and the town. But yes, you know, not everybody loves this stuff, do they? Which is such a shame, because, you know, if we're looking in terms of the climate emergency, then actually the message should be, you know, yes, we need to get out of our cars and travel less, like you were saying, Lizzie. You know, this is an emergency, but it's not being taken seriously, obviously, as the coronavirus. Whereas the impacts aren't seen as directly, are they? So that's the thing.
And I think you know, if we're looking at future waves of future streets and other schools, we end up in a very similar situation, possibly to you, Mark, so the main college in Frome is on the main road to Bath. And there's another kind of middle school which is on the main road heading out towards Westbury, and so it becomes harder in those situations to know how to manage it. But you know, we give it a go.
Yeah, and I would recommend talking to Jess, because she's got loads of good ideas and expertise. And you know, and if you can't do the school streets thing, or maybe you can do it at certain times, you know, for half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the evening, or there might be different ways of sort of reconfiguring things. So yeah, it's worth having a look. Yeah,
it was also good or interesting to hear that potentially putting in cycle paths isn't necessarily the best thing to do to promote cycling and walking, because we are looking at the moment to potentially put in a new stretch of cycle path, which is on a route which it does get used, and you can see there's a grass area running along the A39 which lots of people do walk along. You know, we've got some Section 106 money from a previous development, but also looking to utilise the £1 million pot that's coming out from government as well. And you know, potentially before we do that, we ought to sort of consider other options rather than just putting in this cycle path. So yeah, it'd be good to talk to her.
Definitely, yeah. Cycle paths and everything else, please. I think that's
yeah. and not or and.
Yeah.
Paul, Wharton.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm just adding to that what Mark was talking about. It's interesting because street is similar in a sense, because it has got a bypass, hasn't it? So actually, much of the traffic that probably goes through the high street doesn't actually necessarily need to go through there, does it? It's I know it's slowed down quite a lot already, but
yeah, it is certainly. There is a bypass there, but there is so many traffic lights along that bypass, and also sort of within street, moving sort of lots of the sort of estates and housing to get to the bypass. People would normally have gone through the high street. So yeah, I mean, there's this one particular road which is very narrow. Really, you can only get a single file traffic through there, and they were saying that they were having sort of 600 cars going along there within a sort of 3-hour interval. So you know, it was a massive difference for them, with lorries going past houses which are very close to the road. So yeah,
it's a challenge. Anyway, yeah, I mean, actually the point I wanted to make, I just wanted to say that Anna and Lizzie to some extent do seem to be slightly emphasizing the kind of kickback against this scheme, and actually I think there is inevitably going to be some people that aren't happy about it. You know, people are very, very kind of attached to their cars, etc. But I think actually the people against it is a kind of a vociferous few at the moment in many ways. And my experience of kind of door knocking and talking to people is actually it's overwhelmingly positive, really. And there's a lot of people really behind this scheme. So I'm optimistic that it's not, you know, it's not going to be a huge backlash that you know that we're kind of concerned about, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's that people agree with the goal, but they have concerns about the implementation of what, you know. So the idea of, yes, surely more active, safe, healthy travel for children is a good thing. It's like, yes, this is what, you know, this, you can't really argue against that unless you're slightly weird. So, but it's how you achieve that. And actually this is a very different way. So previously it's been kind of looking at behavior change campaigns, the Active Travel Challenge, competitions, being persuasive, those sorts of things. And now it's like infrastructure. And I think that, yeah, alarms few, but you're probably right, Paul. I think actually overwhelmingly it's like people support the idea, the objective, and then want to go ask questions about the process.
Yeah, I would agree. And yeah, and similar to Paul, I did quite a lot of door knocking and talking to people about it. And so many people said, "Oh, this is brilliant," you know. So it's just, yeah, it's just making sure that it's put it in balance. And it's the same with things like wind turbines, isn't it? It's often, you know, most people don't mind them or like them, but it's the people that, yeah, that are anti that sort of shout the loudest. So it's about getting a balance. The other thing I was going to say is that, I think I mentioned this last time. So one of the things people have said a lot is like, well, what's the knock-on effect going to be, and how's that going to affect traffic, and what about parking everywhere else? And it's really highlighted again to me the importance of having a sort of overall plan, and ideally a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, because really, if we can look at, you know, each area obviously is not in isolation, it's all linked in with everything else. So it is true to some extent what you do in one area will potentially affect other places. And so for ages we've been looking at, well, working with Jess to see if we can get money to do this local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, to really have a proper comprehensive plan of looking at how, for example, you know, the area of called the Butts, which I mentioned earlier, you know, is extremely congested. I mean, air pollution in that area is almost in breach of European regulations because there's so much stopping and starting and lots of parking. You know, could we make it one way? And what would the knock-on effect of that be? So just looking at the whole town as a whole and seeing how it all links up. So that's really the next step. And I'm wondering whether with the Somerset funding, that's something we could maybe apply to do, because you kind of do need this overall plan to make sure that it isn't adversely affecting everywhere else, or that we're encouraging, you know, walking and cycling throughout the area, really.
Fiona, did you want to come in? And then Helen.
Can you hear me better now with these?
Oh, that's good. Yes.
Yes, good. Yeah. Well, I'm from Gillingham, as I said, and we've been putting in some infrastructure. Well, Dorset Council have not. It's nothing to do with the Gillingham Town Councillors. But yes, those vociferous few that you're talking about are much in evidence on, you know, our Facebook town page, while the cycle lanes have been put in, and, you know, everyone's like, oh, cyclists. And it does sort of feel quite depressing, I think, that, you know, something is being done. And everyone, it feels like everyone hates it. I haven't really seen very many positive comments at all, although I'm sure you're right that there are people, you know, that do like it. So I was actually looking at the school streets scheme, because we're hoping to have a sort of bit of a push on all environmental things in October, and I think it's National Walk to School Month in October, so that sort of ties in quite nicely. So it'll be interesting to see when the children are back at school how many people are still walking. I mean, my children are past school age now, but we walked every single day. I can probably count on one hand, you know, the times that the weather was so awful that I drove them. But I noticed all the people, I was waiting for a lift one morning at 8 o'clock, and all the people coming out of our estate, you know, just going to work, one person in the car or driving their children to school and then coming home again 10 minutes later, you know. I fully appreciate that some people are on their way to work, so they drop their kids at school, but there are many, many people who live around me who drive, and some of them will be because, you know, they say, oh no, the roads aren't safe enough. So
yeah,
yes, I think that's certainly a very good initiative. I'm not quite sure how it would work here. I think in Gillingham it would certainly have to be perhaps just during that half hour of school dropping off either end of the day to begin with, but I can't imagine people would accept any more than that as an initial thing. But I think it's certainly something well worth having a look at. So yeah, good to hear other people's successes.
I was just going to say, there's also a really good website, which you might know, it's schoolstreets.org, I think it is, and it's got loads of resources and leaflets and case studies and things like that, so it's really worth having a look at that. I was just wondering as well, is there a way that we can just, I don't know, like, could we work with, I don't know, like local environmental groups? I'm sure we're doing this anyway, but, you know, like, and really encourage people to put the positive comments forward, because I know myself, you know, managing this program, it's just like, oh yeah, you're deluge, you know, there's a whole deluge of like negative stuff, and actually there are probably, as Paul says, loads of people that really like it. So how do we get those people to come forward and, you know, not be drowned out by all the negative stuff? Because the impacts of, you know, the cycle routes, you know, having safe cycle routes and safe areas, I mean, it's so important, isn't it, for everybody, for health, for environment, and and
absolutely. Absolutely. Helen, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just I mean, thinking about it, obviously you are going to get backlash, but actually focusing on the positive, you know, businesses have had to change the last 6 months with how people work. And if you look at that and how you can apply that in flexibility in like children getting to school, one school and then another school. I mean, do you involve businesses within this as well, rather than, you know, being less regimented about certain times or cover of how they, you know, being flexibility around the family, because that all kind of links in, doesn't it, really, with safer streets, really, and how people work and what that looks like now. That all has to change. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a really interesting point. Yeah. The idea that everybody is rushing to get to all their different places all at the same time has always been a kind of illogical, and then we have to have a transport system that flexes to a peak of everybody trying to get somewhere for the same start time. It's just
yeah.
Mike,
We have
Mike,
done
did
some.
you want to come in? Sorry.
Please, just a quick question for Anna. Could you mentioned somebody called Jess? Is that the person that's worked in Bristol?
Yeah, that's right. I just put her
Yes.
details in the chat.
If you could, yes,
Yeah.
that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
And we have worked with businesses a bit. We've so we do this business bulletin, I think, every fortnight or so, and we've promoted the Cycle to Work scheme through that. We're also looking at hopefully getting some electric bikes that people can have for a month or so to kind of try it out and sort of see how it integrates into their routine before they buy one. And there's a local company that's setting up to build electric bikes in Frome, and the idea is with that people can buy it on finance, so it'll only be, I don't know how much it'll be, I like to say it's only £20 a month, probably more than that, but anyway, so you can stagger, rather than having to have, you know, an upfront payment of £1,000, you can stagger the payment over time. You know, electric bikes for somewhere like Frome that's really hilly, it just feels like a great solution for people getting to work and schools.
Yeah, as I've been in touch with you just recently, and we're very much keen on the idea of trying to introduce people to e-bikes. Our problem is similar to streets in a way. We have a main A road that goes from the north to the west of the town. It's the only main thoroughfare. There's no bypass to Brewton. Everything has to come through this A359, and it narrows down in one place to 15 feet wide, and you're supposed to get school traffic, milk floats, milk lorries, aggregate lorries, the whole agglomeration of this huge amount of rush hour traffic, all funneling into this tiny space. And I would love to talk to somebody like Jess to see how if she's got any bright ideas, how we can alleviate this problem, because to me it's the main problem that's affecting Brewton and its transport problems. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Derek.
Yeah, I just wondered about electric vehicles, whether there are any concessions with solar streets for electric vehicles. That's going to be the growing trend. In fact, there's legislation there that all new vehicles, I think it's 2030, will have to be electric vehicles. So that's the trend. There's about 200,000 in the UK now, I think, but against 25 million vehicles. But I wonder what the thoughts were.
I mean, with school streets, there's no exemption for electric vehicles because they can still knock someone down. But obviously, yeah, we're really promoting them, and we've got a network of 5 or 6 chargers now that are available basically for free or for a small donation. We got the initial funding from Zero Carbon World, which I think you might have been in touch with too. And I know Mendip now are looking at putting more chargers in some of their car parks, which should be really good. So for me, it's more about the infrastructure. And there's also, I think maybe I mentioned last time, but there's a really good organisation called Book My Charge, and they enable domestic people, because often people have charge points at home and they're out at work all day and their charge point isn't being used. And so the idea is that with this Book My Charge, they can put themselves on a map and then people use it and pay to use it, so they cover their costs. But it's about sharing, the charge points and the infrastructure rather than having, because at the moment, obviously, that's one of the key barriers.
There's a scheme in that I've discovered, and the Energy Savings Trust contact put me in touch with it. It's Charge My Street in Cumbria, and it's a scheme there, and they've got funding. They're putting in charge points where people they approach the public and say, where would you like charge points to be installed, and they've got funding from Innovate UK, and they're also share funding as well. They're encouraging people to invest in the scheme, but it's been highly successful. So if you just look up Charge My Street on the internet, there's a shed load of information there on that scheme.
That's great. There's really interesting things going on. Jane, you mentioned in the chat that you were, while we're on transport kind of topics, that you were either looking for or perhaps offering advice on the Mendip bus survey. Do you want to?
Well, has everybody heard of this? Have you heard of it in Frome? It was sent round to parish councils, but it seems quite obscure. And Mendip were trying to collect information on all the buses going through every parish.
Okay.
But I tried to fill it in, and St Cuthbert's Out is a very big parish surrounding a transport hub of Wells. So we have a lot of buses going through, and there wasn't enough room on the form to list all our buses. And also the survey wanted the pre-COVID timetables, which simply don't exist anymore.
Wow.
So I'm very worried that Mendip might use this impossible survey to to work out funding for bus services. And if the unitary idea comes through, the survey might be transferred en masse to Somerset, who will take it on board as genuine information. So our clerk's got agreed with Mendip that St Cuthbert's Out can analyse the bus services ward by ward, but that still doesn't solve the problem of not having access to the pre-COVID timetables.
Yeah.
And it also asks, what do people use the bus for? Well, I mean, if you're a tiny parish of 300 people with 2 buses a fortnight, that would probably be easy enough. But we simply can't produce those figures, and we are concerned that the unitary authority idea, with parish councils being given more responsibility, we're going to have to do these professional type surveys without the resources. So I don't know if anybody else has engaged with the Mendip bus survey, or if anyone's got any thoughts on it. We're not really quite sure what to do about it at the minute.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I've actually seen that. I mean, I've just been away for a week, so I haven't caught up with all my emails. But I'll double check.
Quite some time ago.
Oh, did it?
Quite a few weeks ago.
Okay, I'll double check about that. But I'm sure if we just, I mean, Mendip are normally reasonably flexible. If we add the extra information to an email, it might be okay. I don't know.
I think there's this catch-22 of. Go on, Jane.
What I'm worried about is if Somerset then take all Mendip's paperwork en masse, and if the survey is poorly responded to, which you have no choice but to respond poorly to it because it's asking for answers that parishes simply don't have, Somerset will just go, oh, nobody cares about the buses, or oh, there aren't any buses and nobody uses them anyway. And yeah, I really feel that Mendip should drop the whole survey and think of some other strategy before it's too late.
Okay.
So,
well, maybe we can have a look into it. Maybe Anna. It sounds like something we should be looking at anyway, and haven't seen.
I think the deadline is somewhere in October, but I'm not quite sure. I haven't got access to the actual email at the minute.
Okay. Let's see if it's something that we can try and work together on.
Yeah, because I personally depend on the bus services, and so do a lot of the parishioners.
Yeah.
And it's not just the bus service that goes along the main road, it's the connections from the outlying village to the bus services.
Absolutely.
I think that the whole project needs to be redone to take rural communities properly into account.
Yeah, and the catch-22 of buses is that bus companies want to run buses where there are lots of people catching them because that's profitable. But the people who probably need the buses the most are the ones who are often most isolated or most remote, most rural in our areas. So yeah,
it's obvious that public money is, they're preparing to spend public money on which is essential for keeping the bus services going.
Yeah.
So without a poor survey feedback, leads to no more public money, which leads to no more buses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't feel that the consultation is appropriately framed to actually get a real idea of what needs to be spent.
Sure. Okay, well, we'll have a look at it here, and maybe we can have a separate chat amongst the Mendip parishes and towns to just make sure we're kind of nicely organised to respond or to demand a different survey format from them.
I think the connecting services to the main bus routes ought to be taken into account as well.
Yeah.
I'll try and find the email and forward it to Anna. I'm not sure if I've got your email, but I've certainly got Anna's. But yeah, I'll try and find the original survey link.
Brilliant. Shall we switch topic and shall we talk trees for a while? Because we've got Helen here from Froome and also Joe, who wanted to talk about tree planting in Wales. Should we start with Joe, just so we have we'll put Wells top of the list, and then we'll come to Helen afterwards, if that's all right.
I'll keep it as brief as I can. Basically, there's two things I just wanted to talk through. One is an idea that's already been signed off by Wells City Council, and we're launching in October. And the idea is very, very simple. We set up a not-for-profit market stall outside Wells Town Hall, and we sell native tree saplings at bulk discount prices. How does that work? Well, you can basically buy them off the Woodland Trust. If you're prepared to go, if you go on their website, there's a section landowners packs, and they do these wonderful pollinator-friendly, wildlife-friendly tree packs where you end up buying these saplings as little as 74p each. So we will look to sell them for literally £1 each. It's not for profit, so any add up all the 25p's, they will either be used to fund free trees for schools or wildlife boxes or wild seeds or what have you. And I mean, this is something which, other councils, I'd be obviously delighted if anybody else was interested in this idea. I mean, the Woodland Trust are totally aware of what we're doing, and they've helped us very much with supplying images for the point of sale on the market stall. So that's all happening. If we can just sell 60 saplings per week, that would equate to 3,000 extra trees, which starts to become a sort of meaningful figure. So that idea is happening. We've got this not-for-profit town hall or Wells City Council market stall on market days, starting from later on this year. But so that has now been slightly amended. And I don't know whether anyone saw Countryfile, not this Sunday, but this previous Sunday, where there was a lady called Sophie Flux, and she worked with Risby, I think it's in Northamptonshire somewhere, Risby Parish Council, to increase the amount of area dedicated to being wildlife friendly. Very interesting article. If you get a chance to see it on iPlayer, it's not as relevant for Wales as perhaps it might be for other areas, but there was one thing that really stood out head and shoulders, and it was how they managed objections to residents complaining when areas were left to go wild because they look untidy. And what she did to overcome that and create a sort of an umbrella logo, an umbrella brand for the initiative. So everywhere you went, there was the same logo, was a logo she created that was Wildlife Friendly Village. So anyway, I picked up with Sophie, and really, she sent me basically everything that she did to get this logo produced or get the whole idea signed off in Risby. She even went as far as to say, look, I'll even design a wildlife friendly city logo for you. She is really keen to see this idea branch out and be expanded. And then also by return, I sent her all the stuff that I'd used to get the tree idea through Wells City Council, and all the point of sale material and all the visuals that have been signed off. And she's going to look to launch that in October, November anyway. So, I mean, I suppose it's just it's a nice example of parish councils, not even local, working together. And I guess the offer's there that if anybody is interested in the tree idea or what Sophie sent me, she's more than happy for people to, you know, basically come on board in a similar fashion.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. I'm quite inspired by that. Helen.
Oh,
sorry,
Yeah,
just to finish off, I only stood as a Wells City Councillor in February, and I had no intention. I've never been involved in anything like this before, and where my inspiration came from was I attended a meeting in Wegmore last October, which was Power to Your Parish, which Anna may remember because she contributed to it. So I came away from that meeting thinking, oh, the penny sort of dropped at a parish council level. There is an awful lot you can't do, but there is an awful lot you can do that can have a really long-lasting and meaningful impact. So, well, you know, I was inspired by others. So, you know, it's pass on the inspiration.
Oh, that's really lovely. Thank you so much for telling us that. That's great. And yay, Anna and others who were involved in that session for inspiring you. And welcome to council life. It's a strange world. Helen.
Joe, I'll be in touch with you, actually. I'm really interested in that. So I'm not going to say too much. I didn't know I was going to come to this meeting until about half an hour before, so I haven't prepared much to say. But I will tell you about some exciting projects. We are going to be doing some, they're going to be out for consultation soon about tree planting in Rodden Meadow and Mary Bailey in Froome. Something I'm quite excited about or want to propose is that we do some mini forests, something I've been researching a bit, and this is basically planting around 600 trees in the size of a tennis court. So this, basically, they grow 10 times faster, they're 100% more biodiverse, they're 30 times more dense, and they're 100% organic. But they start linking up wildlife corridors. They wouldn't be necessarily to walk through, but they're small pockets which you can have a real intense impact, and hopefully be much better for the environment and much better for wildlife, and be little pockets of you know, help just with your own investigations with nature. The two areas, so Mary Bailey Park is a public park, there's lots of play. There isn't a lot of trees in there at the moment. It's very different to Rodden Meadow. They're two very different sites. So it'd be really interesting to see what that's going to look like on both sites. Something else that I'm trying to put together is a scheme where residents and organisations and businesses can make financial contributions or donations to support the Wild About Trees project, and part of this will be offsetting their carbon. So they'll be able to invest and improve the local environment, increase biodiversity, improve the green infrastructure, link wildlife corridors, and offset some carbon. And part of this, an option would be to be able to gift a donation. So I want to set something up. So if you want to buy, invest in it, or donate for someone's birthday or anniversary, or or a marriage, or to celebrate someone's life, you can do this. I don't know. Sorry.
That's all right.
So there are just a few things that I are working on right now, and we'll be setting out for consultation in September. But I am interested in perhaps setting up or being part of a tree planting network if we can set something up, and just to link in a little bit more of what's going on, and like that, just sharing ideas and what's working in other town councils and other parishes. I think, you know, that would only be a plus and a positive thing that we could work together on. So that's it from me right now.
No, that's absolutely great, and thank you for the impromptu update. I think one of the things that we kind of learned about tree planting, is the scale that would be needed to do kind of proper carbon offsetting, and also Frome as a town council has got a reasonable amount of land. We've got some parks, we've got some kind of meadow land, informal lands, allotments, but we haven't got enough land for all the trees. And so what I love about the Wells approach is to say, okay, put one in your garden, put two in your garden, actually using private space to encourage tree planting as well. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, just to say with the Wells tree planting thing, I mean, what we're also going to look to do is when I get it absolutely up and running, I've got a date, is contact loads of local businesses and clubs. Because I can think of worse problems if we sell out. And it's the thing is that when you're buying like 210 saplings at a time, that's going to be a lot of saplings for a rugby club, a golf club, or wherever, or a private individual with some land. But what you're doing is sort of just bridging that gap and acting as a conduit, where you just basically make it so affordable for people, £1 each. I mean, it's crazy. So, and if you buy them individually, you have to pay about, I think it's now £7 or £8 per sapling. So, I mean, that's what sort of fantastic value it is.
Yeah. Ewan, did you want to jump in there?
I did. I just wanted to jump in on the trees point, picking up on Wells, actually. Sorry, that's what I don't know if everyone's aware, but Somerset Wildlife Trust own and manage a lot of land on the Mendips above Wells, and they're facing a bill over the next 2 or 3 years for, they estimate, a little bit north of £500,000 for ash dieback, because they own, obviously they've got a lot of land with ash trees alongside roads and footpaths. So if there are ways for local councils maybe to get involved with helping Somerset Wildlife Trust, either in a volunteer capacity to reduce their costs or to help replant trees when we're losing ash, that could be an opportunity.
Thanks for that. That's interesting to know. And then there was a related question, well, another question from Jane about how tree planting links to hedges. Jane, do you want to just elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, in our parish, we're having to spend quite a lot of money maintaining the trees that we've got. And I know that the trouble with grant funding is it's all for tick the box projects and there's nothing for future maintenance. And it occurred to me while I've been walking over lockdown, I've noticed that quite a lot of the local fields are very large and could perhaps be divided into 2 or perhaps even 3 fields with new hedging. I don't know how the farmers would respond to that, if they'd be keen on it if you paid for the hedging, and how establishing hedges as opposed to forests. I mean, obviously hedges are much more low maintenance because you just take the hedge cutter along the top. Obviously been much nicer to have it properly laid, but you can maintain a hedge very easily. And there was formerly a grant available from the Department of Agriculture to encourage farmers to leave trees in hedges, so that they would just lift the cutter and then drop it again, and they got money for doing that. I don't know if anybody knows if that's still going, but would planting a hedge count as tree planting is the key concept here, because hedges are much easier to look after and probably more popular and don't actually, are of use to other people who own the land. So we could expand the whole project onto different pieces of land.
That's a very interesting thought. Yeah, Joe, did you?
Just in terms of the sort of most popular native woodland trees or saplings that would be selling, things like hawthorn and blackthorn well, there'll be saplings that can either be trimmed to produce a hedge or they can be a tree. And then there's a whole host of other plants, such as like dog rose and goat willow, that are absolutely ideal for forming hedgerows. I think it's all about what you want to start off doing. I mean, at the end of the day, to a farmer, if he could buy 45, hawthorn bushes for £1 each, and he wants a new hedge, and there's perhaps some local support for it. In a way you could do it. I mean, just for example, just through local clubs, you could go to the local club and say, okay, you sell these for £1 each and you raise money, for this head. And it's just, you know, it's sort of like it's such a low entry point level. Sorry, but that's the point, I think, is that, you know, while there are clearly things like oak trees and rowings and silver birch, that, you know, they're always going to be trees. There are a lot of woodland trees that can also be kept as bushes, if that makes sense, hedges.
Yeah, absolutely. Helen?
Yeah, I mean, Jane, hedgerow equally as important as trees, and that would be still counted as tree planting. But what you went on to say about the care and maintenance of the trees is obviously, you know, it's a big thing, and equally as important. It's not just about the tree planting, and, you know, we very much want to involve the community within Frome within the whole process. And if we could set something up with, you know, where if people are able to donate, but also do some tree planting as well and invest in it physically. We did some tree planting back in February and have got already established list of people. And we hope then, I mean, lockdown changed plans a little bit. So our care and maintenance events have looked quite different, but we very much want to involve the community. And I think that has to be thought out quite carefully with regards to the future of tree planting and how many you want to plant, because it's definitely the first, you know, 3 to 5 years are very, very important for the trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Oh, Rich, hello. You can introduce yourself to everybody as well.
Hi, Rich Ackroyd. Sorry I'm late. I was in another meeting. I'm one of the Frome Town Councillors. I'm just going to add about tree planting. You know, it's not just the number of trees that you put in. So you might think, oh, we'll put 400 in this space, but maybe 100 would do, because it'd be less maintenance and they might grow better with less competition. So I think that's something really important to think about. Somebody did mention to me a few months ago it's about the canopy, apparently. You know, when you're talking CO2 and gases and things, it's about the tree canopy. That's the bit that's very efficient. So they are going to need space eventually. So density, important to think about. And then also, I think we've got some good examples in Frome where we've done some great community planting. And for the most part, it's been really successful. But I would say we've got one site which was not particularly well thought out. And I think we've had issues because of that. So I think be very careful before you go plonking a load of trees somewhere, and do make sure you've got community buy-in and that it is going to be suitable. So certainly 3 sites I can think of in Frome, 2 of them were brilliant sites, great. The third one, on the day, loads of people came down and planted trees, but actually there's been a lot of damage. And, you know, with hindsight, we might have done that a bit better. So I think we can learn by mistakes as well, but it's not just about the numbers.
Brilliant, thank you.
Liking the Wells stall idea, that's quite nice.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I think that's where, you know, like learning from mistakes is important. I think that's where consultation is really, really key, and future consultation, how we go about it. But it is very much right tree, right place, and looking at that. So yeah, thanks, Rich.
Brilliant, thank you all. I'm going to, speaking of right places, I'm going to move us to Dorset. Because we've got a couple of updates, I think, from Dorset. Polly, do you want to tell us about the work you're testing, your pilot project with small businesses?
Yes, over the last 3 years with Turn Lime Green, we've had a very active and successful plastic-free Lyme Regis campaign, and we've worked very closely with businesses. There's been loads of support there, and so now we're sort of looking at the broader sort of climate change issues. We thought we'd develop a series of case studies with small businesses, and we've got our first candidate, if you will, and we want to work with them to look at all aspects of the business, the use of energy, the transport, I mean, all the procurement, habits in the office, all these aspects. We've got a number of sort of templates we're looking at to help on that. For example, Sustainable Dorset has done their wonderful Green Living project, which is aimed at domestic homes, but there'll be a lot in that which will be applicable to a medium, small business. But the area which might be of we're looking at is how, you know, to sort of measure, because you want to have a starting point, say with your carbon footprint, and then see how you progress and what kind of improvements you can make. And so I just want to throw it out because this is a sort of a pilot case study, and there might be some ideas amongst all of you about how to, some idea of measurement really, and evidencing improvement. So any ideas would be great.
Challenge.
Thanks.
Anna.
I don't know of any. Oh, I'm just having a look actually if the Carbon Trust had something like that. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that in Frome we've been doing this Good Business programme, and over the last few years really we developed this, and it's a similar kind of thing. Basically developed this framework which looks at sort of social, economic and environmental impacts of businesses, and recently we've put it all online so that it's now sort of a survey that businesses can fill in, and obviously it encompasses things like you know, whether they're using a renewable energy supplier, but also looks at, for example, whether they're linked to the local community and whether they'd be interested in linking more or supporting things like tree planting and things. And in the past we found that's worked really quite well, and I can certainly send you a link to that if you're talking to local businesses. We've tried to make it quite sort of simple and succinct, because obviously I know in Frome something like 75% of our businesses are SMEs, you know, and they're often just like one of, you know, just very small teams trying to manage everything. So we just want to make it as sort of, well, as useful but also easy to do as possible. So we've got that. But I do agree there's been more and more interest, hasn't there, around sort of doing an actual carbon footprint. And one of the businesses we've been working with called TBT Marketing, and it's a slightly larger company, they've recently done quite an extensive carbon footprint with a company I think called Planet Mark, but I can double check and send that in the chat, or send it in the follow-up email. And that has been quite comprehensive and they've paid for it, but then it has been one of the things where they get this official stamp that shows that they're this kind of carbon neutral company, and that they're really sort of being proactive in terms of the climate emergency. There's also a climate emergency declaration for businesses. I don't know if you've seen that. I discovered it a little while ago, and so I've been encouraging businesses to join that, because again, it's, you know, we need everybody, don't we, to be saying, look, this is an emergency, we need to be doing stuff, and then obviously through that they can link up with others and learn from others, because there's never any point in reinventing the wheel, is there? We can all just be sharing this. I'll put the thing in the chat. But that sounds great, and I'd love to see your templates as well, so maybe we can share those as a follow-up.
Well, we're in very, very early stages, but what we found with the businesses, because I mean, you can imagine in Lyme, I mean, you're talking about some very small ones, but the goodwill is there. They're wanting, as individuals at a personal level, to make their businesses environmentally friendly as possible, and but also there's a marketing aspect to it, as you know, their customers are becoming more discerning. They're really pleased. Oh, you're doing, you know, refills or whatever it is, and particularly we've got a lot of accommodation businesses, so they're using that a lot in their own bed and breakfast accommodation, and then sharing that information with their customers, who then take it home, and you know, so it's all a nice sort of link. In fact, the case for our first case study is in accommodation. So it'll be interesting,
That's brilliant. Yeah, we've done a little bit of work with working with accommodation providers to link them up with things like the with our hybrid car club, for example, because people can get to Frome by train, but then once they're there, they kind of sometimes need transport to get around the area. So linking them up with that, and also the e-bike hire. But no, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Derek.
Certainly in Gloucestershire, we've got a Severn Y energy agency, which offers a lot of advice to business for energy efficiency. And they've been running schemes like Target 2020, I think it's now Target 2030. And funding was coming from the European Regional Development Fund, offering 35% funding for business to introduce equipment to reduce their carbon footprint. So solar or more efficient boilers or whatever, that sort of thing. So I don't know whether Dorset has got, I don't think 7Y will extend down to Dorset, but whether Dorset as a county has got something equivalent to that. I'm just wondering whether the energy, if you contacted the Energy Savings Trust as well, they may. I know I've been talking to them a lot. I'm not sure they could be helpful for business, but certainly 7Y have been very helpful. And our district council has been consulting with 7Y with regard to incentivizing business to be more energy efficient, and they wanted to introduce incentives with regard to business rates. But and 7Y has asked me for to comment on that, and I've said, well, a lot of small business they're eligible for small business relief, so they're not paying any business rates at all. So I've told them that the better route to go, if the district council wants to get involved, is to adopt the scheme that 7Y were doing, with offering funding to introduce more carbon neutral whatever. So there may be some ideas there that you can take up, but it's just
thank you.
Your local area is doing that.
Yeah, that's very helpful, and I have a feeling Pete West probably would have a few what's going on in Dorset too.
He's holding his powder, keeping his powder dry. He's not kind of just jumping in because he knows he's next on the list, next on the agenda.
We can be in touch.
But there's some links in the chat as well that
oh, thanks.
Might be useful. So yeah, I'm trying to remember that there's either a Sustainable Hoteliers or Responsible Hoteliers Association, which is a really useful group as well, which you may have already kind of come across for your accommodation providers. And
yes, certainly there are green tourism awards, all sorts of things. Yes, that our major hotels do, which we've got 3 big ones. But there's that next level down. We have many.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, and even at national government level, there's a recognition that small businesses are kind of the hardest nut to crack when it comes to sustainability. There's a huge amount of goodwill and lots of businesses that want to do the right thing, but actually how you get support and funding and information out to those businesses is quite hard. And I think local is the way. So yeah, the more we can do there, the better. Pete, you've been queued up now. We've trailed you. We're ready for you. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us what you're up to, but not on mute because we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I know. Still finding it hard to get used to all this. Bit of positive feedback though to start with. I think this is really impressive. Really great the way that you'd be able to share information. And as I said at the beginning, I'm partly participating. I had a link from Belinda Bowden from Turn Lime Green because we'd like to set up a sort of a climate action network in Dorset to share information. So perhaps at the end, if you've got any time, I'd really be interested to know how you, like, for example, have you got a contact list that you invite to these Zoom meetings? Are you limited only to town and parish councils? Because I think this sort of supplementary information about supporting businesses is really helpful as well. And also just the way that you actually share information. I mean, this is really interesting. We're using the chat group and putting links there. It just seems, I don't know, I'm sure I read somewhere you only need 3% of the population to make a change. And I think it's probably a way to do it is just to get activists, even if there's a small number, to start making things happen. Anyway, I just wanted to participate and give you a bit of feedback about a fairly innovative project that we're delivering in Bridport in Dorset, and that's delivered by Dorset Community Energy, which is a community benefit society exactly the same as your Frome Community Energy, as we know, Anna. This is like an informal briefing because as in the real world, you know, things are never black and white, so it's not promotional. But it could be slightly interesting to other groups in future. What the project is about is working with an award-winning national organisation, some of you probably heard of, called Energy Local. They won the Ashton Award in 2018. And basically, it's to enable households and businesses to purchase locally generated renewable electricity through the grid. The award-winning project within Bethesda in North Wales, it was based on a 100 kilowatt hydro, which was supplying electricity to householders through the grid. And it's obviously you need the metering and the billing and a backup supply when the renewables isn't generating. And originally in Bethesda, that was done by cooperative energy. So householders switched to cooperative energy. They would buy the hydroelectricity with their other electricity, with the backup electricity, but the hydro would be cheaper. And this is really, really innovative because basically renewable energy can be actually delivered cheaper than fossil fuel electricity. And in Bridport, we're looking at supplying electricity from an existing 50 kilowatt wind turbine. The wind turbine owner, farmer, at the moment gets 5.5 pence for what he puts into the grid, what he exports to the grid, which is obviously everything he generates. Through this project, we are hoping that his export will be supplied to 50 householders in real time, in half-hour blocks, at 9.5 pence a kilowatt hour, with the balance and the metering and billing undertaken by Octopus Energy, who are the new partner with Energy Local. So on the back of that, Dorset Community Energy is applied for and receiving funding from the Rural Community Energy Fund to add 2 separate 200 kilowatt ground mounted solar arrays to complement the wind, because the solar and the wind go really well together. You know, solar in the summer, wind in the winter, wind at night, solar in the day, which should enable us to recruit businesses. So basically businesses then with the daytime electricity use, local businesses, would be able to purchase the solar. So, and this will be the first town in England to actually operate this local renewable electricity supply, which is very much in line with, unfortunately, EU, which we know we can't really collaborate with anymore. But basically, the EU Renewable Energy Directive is got a big section on these energy communities and legislation passed in every member state to allow people to trade electricity locally through, you know, through not-for-profit organisations. So Europe is moving ahead with this slowly, and I would just like to see something happening in the UK. So that's the positive side. That the reality is it's been really difficult. So it's nice to talk face to face. Obviously, this metering and billing is extremely complex. You basically need a meter on the generator, smart meters in every house, which has been postponed because of coronavirus, and the smart meters in the houses to be able to communicate with the meter on the generator, so Octopus can actually sell separately the generation at 9.5p. So I think I would say we were misled. We said that we were told that this was like ready to go. So we launched the project in January this year. Couple of street stalls, public meeting, absolutely huge amount of interest. Wanted 50 householders. We got 90 in the first few weeks. So that's why we added the solar to allow more customers and more people to participate. And we set up a cooperative which represents the household, so a separate cooperative to represent the householders. So that was all done, but then Energy looks, oops, there's a bit of a delay here. You know, basically the software isn't ready. We had it available with cooperative energy, but Octopus have got to develop their bespoke software, and there's been delay, and also there's been, unfortunately, problems with even buying the export from the wind turbine generator. So he's a bit annoyed now because he'd switched in January, and it took them 4 or 5 months before they paid him anything for export, because they weren't used to dealing with small generators at all. They were used to, you know, large solar farms, so they hadn't got the software even to buy electricity from small generators. So that's just a bit of a background. But if it's successful, the replication is huge. Basically, they're even talking about householders then, instead of this smart energy guarantee, basically householders selling their export to people without PV, you know, 9.5p. And the other thing, which is quite nice, it's a transparent flat rate. So basically, Octopus make their profit by selling the backup at an agreed price, which is competitive in itself, and they get new customers. But the selling price and the buying price is the same. So the farmer gets 9.5p in our case with wind turbine, and householders purchase at 9.5p. And we're running it as an upper profit. And the other side of it, of course, it would be financed by Dorset Community Energy would finance the solar installations through a community share offer. So again, it would keep money in the local economy. So we're still waiting to start. If it's not operational by the end of this year, I think we're going to back off, because it's a matter of sort of saving our own reputation. But we'll put a lot of effort into it, and if it does work, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, it sounds incredible, and it's always the challenge when you're going first with something, is that you have to find all the holes in the road. Back to cycling again. Find all the holes in the road that they need fixing, and yeah, it's more kind of. We're on your side. We're on your side. I think the idea of buying locally, and then particularly things like household to household sales, because one of the things that comes up quite a bit is okay, well, solar PV is great if you're in a house that has a roof that faces the right direction, that's the right dimensions and so forth. But there are people who can't install PV. How do they take part in this new energy system? And actually, this is how people can take part, and it makes it's where we need to be. It's just how we get from where we are right now to that vision that we can see. Derek.
Yeah, just a question for you, Pete. You mentioned the Rural Community Energy Fund there, I think. Did you get any capital funding from that, or is it? It's basically, I've investigated this many times, and their funding is just for feasibility. Is that so? Did you use them for feasibility, or was there any capital funding through it?
Yeah, it's the feasibility is for feasibility, and it's in two stages. There's an initial sort of feasibility scoping study, which we're actually about £20,000 for that, which mainly consultants to look for sites for solar PV and do a financial analysis. No capital. It's quite, what would you say? We're not typical, though, I think, Derek, because in Dorset, we've got capital grants available through this low carbon Dorset fund, through the county council, 40% capital grants, which enables us to do continuous solar PV installations, for example, financed on schools. We're doing some in hospitals at the moment because we haven't got a feed-in tariff anymore, but we can use the capital grants for the installation. So that's our plan. If we don't get the capital grant for the ground-mounted solar, we won't be able to continue. So as Lizzie said, we would have to then just think about selling solar export from existing houses, or possibly doing some solar on roofs on maybe industrial buildings where there'd be quite a lot of export to supply other people.
Yeah, great. Well, Gloucestershire are about to, well, this month they're going to decide on, they've got £1 million climate action fund, which they delayed from April for decision making because of COVID. But yeah, they're offering capital funding there. I think that the government have, well, through the local enterprise partnerships, they've been allocating funding as well, so we're trying to tap into that locally. But I just, I just wondered whether the community fund had been revised, but I think it's, as you say, it's all feasibility. Basically, the projects we've got, we've done our own feasibility. We just need the money.
Exactly. The grant scheme in Dorset has been running for 3 years now. It's been just absolutely overwhelming success. There's about 100 businesses who've had grants, and total volume of energy efficiency and renewables.
Okay.
So it feels like Dorset's had the money in place, and Somerset and Gloucestershire might just be starting to kind of, because Somerset's moving forward with £1 million, coincidentally £1 million climate action funding. So yeah, no doubt Somerset and Gloucestershire people have been chatting away. Good stuff. Any other questions on the project that's happening in Dorset? Or Anna, I don't know if you want to mention anything around what we're going to talk about, Rural Community Energy Fund or the Somerset funding?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
No, Pete, that project sounds great. And we've been looking at that sort of really in the early stages and linking up with Energy Local too to see. So I'm glad that you're having all the teething problems and it'll all be smooth by the time we follow your lead. At the moment, we're applying to the Royal Community Energy Fund for a community wind turbine, or feasibility of a community wind turbine. Sorry, this is Frome Renewable Energy Co-op, not the Town Council. And we're also applying to them to do a community-owned solar farm linked to a local developer. And the idea with that is that the developers will put some money towards the construction costs and installation costs as part of their sort of zero carbon strategy commitments. So hopefully, yeah, because you're right, we need to find financial models that work, don't we? Now we haven't got the feed-in tariff, and obviously there is the smart export guarantee, but it's tiny. So for me, things like the Energy Local model of linking up, you know, supply and demand directly and enabling people to, yeah, also have affordable energy. I mean, it's just such a great approach. So I really hope it does work in the longer term. Yeah, so the final thing I was wondering about, talking about, and I suppose this is not really so relevant for other councils, although if Gloucestershire's got £1 million funds too, then maybe they're sort of similar. I just wondered if people had any thoughts around, so Somerset have launched this just yesterday, £1 million climate fund for, I'm just getting the press release up, a pot of £1 million now available to help local communities become carbon neutral and mitigate the impacts of climate change. It's particularly for towns and parishes, and they're invited to bid for between £5,000 and £75,000 for innovative projects that can make a real difference in reducing carbon emissions. I just feel like, you know, there'll be lots of people applying for this. You know, will all be sort of compete? Is there a way we can collaborate rather than compete? You know, and what are the things that we could do sort of on a regional level, not just in Somerset, but also in Gloucestershire or in Dorset? So I don't know if you have any thoughts. Ewan, have you got some thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just update you. I think Anna knows this. So we're working on in Brewton, because I don't think James is on the call today. We've got a Retrofit Brewton fund that we've been putting together with the Centres for Sustainable Energy in Bristol. Councillor James Hood has been leading on that. And we've also been talking with Somerset County Council officers about the fund, and they'd welcome bids from groups of parishes. So, because it's only £1 million and there's a lot of parishes in Somerset, so to get close to the upper limit of 75,000, you need to basically club together. So we're starting to talk with, we passed it through our council last Tuesday to enable us to do it. And we're starting to talk with Castle Carey and Wincanton, like the little grouping that we like to call the Wild East. And what we're proposing to do is actually employ some staff to market the government's Green Home Grants, £5,000, and basically get out into homes to encourage people to take it up, and also work with local tradespeople to encourage them to get the necessary certifications. So I certainly think there's a need for, at Somerset and Dorset, Wiltshire, because we're very close to the border level, let's build a database of who's got the certificates to do this work, because it's one of those government schemes which you can't access the grant unless you've got the certificate. Mm-hmm. So, you know, opportunity to do that. And what we're proposing to do, by the way, is offer the services for free to the smaller parishes locally, because we think the towns can access the grant and have the officer support to fund it, basically, but we don't think the smaller parishes have the capacity. So this kind of aligns with, whether we like it or not, the moves towards a unitary council one way or the other, and close and like neighbourhood working between parishes, following the SALC and Somerset Society of Local Council Clerks model for devolution, which we've built into the 2 business cases.
Oh, that sounds great. Are you able to share the council paper? I mean, I'm sure I can probably find it, can't I, on the Brewton website? But
I can ping it to you.
Okay,
I'll send
brilliant.
it to you, Anna.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Because it does just feel like one of those things, you know, and also if there are good models that we're all developing, we might as well share them and replicate. It'd be, you know, so much easier and more, yeah, more impactful. I mean, I did wonder about things like the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. I mean, it's such a dry title, isn't it? And maybe it won't be seen as being so sort of transformative, but it does feel like it is one of those key things that we need. And in terms of the government, the funding that's been coming down from national government, it has been the areas that have got these LC whips that have then been able to get the funding. So it's kind of, but I don't know whether they probably want, you know, funding a report is probably not as attractive as funding, you know, like a detailed retrofit program or something. So yeah, if anyone has any other thoughts, but it would be great to link up and just, as you say, sort of combine our approach over the next few weeks. And maybe I'll include that in the email, and so maybe we can have a separate group that can email ideas and discuss that together.
I think certainly the idea of the database of tradespeople and sharing that, because, you know, the catchment area for a Froome household will tend to look for a Froome business to deliver something, but that Froome installer might also be serving other towns and other villages around in the local area. And it also stops, that sounds really bad, but if we can have good databases of people, local people who can do this work, it helps support those local businesses rather than companies coming in from elsewhere and that money leaking out of the local economy. So I think that's a great idea. Derek.
Certainly, the funding issue. It's been obvious to me that the UK generally, or the government, have been spending huge amounts, I mean, millions in the cities. There's Sunderland and Oxford and Dundee, where they've invested huge amounts of money with electric vehicle infrastructure and canopies and solar panels and what have you. So I've been trying to make the decision makers more aware that the rural areas have been totally neglected, and we've got big ideas like we've been talking about, and we're looking for funding, and I think it's having an effect. Whether I've done something, I'm not. Hopefully, I have. But talking to the Energy Savings Trust, my contact there, he says they're trialing something in West Sussex where they've got some bigger projects, but they are linking it to rural projects as well. And he says it's early stages, but they're just experimenting with something. But the announcement of the government allocating money to the local enterprise partnerships for to encourage lower carbon footprint and what have you. There's Gloucestershire, they've allocated there some 11 million, I think. Some of it's been allocated, but I think I've made them aware of our projects, and I think we may be in with a possibility there of funding. So there's money around, we just need to tap into it, and it's all coming from the European Regional Development Fund, which runs until 2023. So we've got a few years to run. Brexit hasn't influenced it. So there may be some ideas there.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. So we've got about 20 minutes left of our allotted time, and given that we're, you know, a smaller group this time, and it seems a shame to kind of break up and go into breakout rooms. So I just wanted to open it up to anybody who has been listening, has been reflecting on what they've heard. If you've got any questions or things that you're thinking about doing within your parish or town that you just want to sort of just say out loud and see what happens. Fiona.
Oh, let's unmute myself. Well, as I said earlier, I'm the lead member on our climate emergency subcommittee. We were originally a task and finish group, which seemed ludicrous to me because we're not exactly going to task and finish it, are we?
Climate emergency, let us know.
So one of the things I've achieved in the year that I've been a councillor is to get that change from a task and finish group to a subcommittee. They insisted on calling it Greener Gillingham. They wouldn't call it anything to do with climate emergency or climate change because that was far too scary and emotive. And of course, I'm only the lead member. There are 5 of us and I'm generally outvoted. So it's felt quite a frustrating year, to be honest. I'm very new to being a councillor and the way that it all works, whereas I think other members of my group are quite experienced and know how things work. So I've gone a bit rogue now, and with us not really having meetings over, you know, due to COVID, we've sort of decided that we'll have a Green October and have sort of daily postings across social media, because our mayor originally wanted to have a Green Day back in April, which was obviously cancelled due to COVID. So I had a chat with him the other day and said, why don't we do a virtual event, but instead of one day, make it a whole month? And then we can post on, you know, I'd already looked at the school streets. I was really pleased to hear Anna talking about that, because I think that's something we know we'd really like to implement here if at all possible. And I'm kind of hoping that by having something quite gentle perhaps across October, that it will engage the community more, because, you know, I feel like whenever anyone posts anything to do with climate emergency, that it's quite a backlash to it. There's certainly been a massive backlash to the cycle lanes being put in here that I spoke about earlier. And just generally, you know, if the topic of, you know, if our local Extinction Rebellion group do anything, it's very, very negative, receives very negative responses, rarely anything positive at all. So I feel we need a much gentler approach to get people on board. And, you know, I'm hoping that I've spoken to quite a few local businesses. We've got Rivers Meet, which is our local leisure centre, who've got lots of green initiatives and are really passionate about it. And one of their members of staff has sort of done a course, and, you know, he's kind of trying to implement lots of green extra things there, which is really encouraging. So I was interested to hear about Polly's you know, case studies of local businesses. That seems like a really, really good idea to, you know, and I'm hoping that during that month of October, we can showcase lots of local businesses that do, you know, really positive things, and that then hopefully will inspire other people. And I also absolutely love Joe's idea of the market stall for the saplings, you know, so I'm thinking perhaps that's something else that we could implement here as well. So we've got a community orchard being planted actually later on this year, just about 2 minutes from my house. So that's another really good initiative here. So yeah, I think just any ideas really for getting that community engagement, because, you know, the town council just can't, I'm one person, I just can't do it on my own. I feel like there are so many great things we could be doing, and, you know, there's only so many hours in a day. It needs a whole team of people, you know, to be really engaged and get involved with all these things. So yes, so thank you for organising this. I do find these chats really, really inspiring, so thank you.
Thank you. Polly, did you want to respond?
Yes, one thing on the case studies we did, Fiona, was if you look on the plasticfreelime.uk website, there's little case studies. We talked to cafe, hotel, B&B, one of the local churches, different businesses, and they spoke just for answered 5 questions, I think. Why do you think it's important to give up plastics? What have you done? What are the pros and cons? What were the easy things? You know, that sort of little interview, which not only went into, is available online, but also we went into the local newspaper as a little kind of a Q&A idea. And that was quite nice to do. So if you've got someone who's handy with a video camera and, you know, interviewing technique, and could put together something pretty easly, I think, that you could just put on YouTube.
That sounds great. Yes, thank you.
That's great. And I think going back to your point about the framing of it, I was looking, because I do this now, I geek out at the list of local authorities that declared climate emergency, and there was a local authority that wasn't on the list. It's one of the London boroughs that I know I know some of the people there quite well, and I thought, well, okay, why aren't they on the list? Because I'm sure they've got big ambitions around carbon and climate. So I looked on their website, and they had had a vote on declaring climate emergency last year and rejected it. But at the same time, as a council, they had approved a carbon neutral target date of 2030 for themselves, and 2035 for the borough. And so there was it's like, what's going on? So I asked my friend there, and said, well, how on earth? And it's like, declaring climate emergency was too political in a politically divided council. But agreeing to carbon reductions was not at all controversial. Everybody was like, yeah, of course we've got to do this. We just don't like, and it was partly that they just didn't like each other very much when it came to the kind of party political divides, but they all agreed on the big issue, which was strange, but you work with what you've got. And I think actually the approach of sort of taking it gently with people, saying, look, here are some easy things you can do, easy everyday things you can do. It's kind of non-threatening. It's not shouty, it's just easy everyday things. Actually might get more and more, might galvanise more action. Be really interested to see what results you get.
Yeah.
That said, there is still scope for activism, important role for activism and protest.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I'm sort of involved with everything, every way of approaching it.
Yeah. Joe?
Picking really up on some of the points that were raised and people's varying attitudes towards the climate change emergency. When I was trotting around the streets of Wales asking people to vote for me and floating the idea of planting lots more trees, there were certainly some people, when you positioned it to address the climate change emergency, they just reject it. But then if you come back and say, yeah, but you're aware, clearly, like when we were kids and, biodiversity and the amount of wildlife, they get it. So for me, it's almost, the branding that Sophie Flux has come up with, this wildlife friendly city or wildlife friendly town or village, sort of encompasses everything. And it's almost doing it under the cover of darkness. So obviously the people who understand climate change will get it anyway. And the people who don't believe in it will be brought into it and do it because it's a good thing to do for wildlife without actually compromising their beliefs, shall we say. Does that make sense? I mean, I think the positioning is all key. Obviously, if it's cycle lanes or something to do with road traffic, it's a lot harder to position it, but certainly anything to do with planting trees, mention wildlife, and, most people, it's more acceptable to the vast majority of people, of climate change deniers.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd also say things like the health side of things, it's just really important. So that when I've been talking about safer streets, that's why we call it Safer Streets as well. It's all about active lifestyles and health. We haven't mentioned actually climate emergency. We just thought, just keep it simple and just talk about health and the benefits, the physical benefits. I'd also say, if you're looking at doing sort of easy-ish projects, things like solar streets, because I know what it's like having very limited time and trying to fit lots of things in. Solar streets is pretty easy. You just have to put the town council's logo on a leaflet and send it round, and people seem to go for it. So there might be some sort of easy projects, and there is I can send round maybe, I'm not sure if you came to the first one that we did a presentation about what we've been doing with Froome, but also there's a presentation that goes with it, a PDF that's got loads and loads of links and information and sort of toolkits of things that you can sort of quite easily do, because I totally understand the pressures around it. It's like, my God, it's such a massive thing. There's so much we should and could be doing, but let's maybe just focus on a few things and not have a burnout. Yeah.
Rich, you've been active in the chat. Do you want to just mention?
No, I did. I'm sorry, I didn't know what you'd already spoken about.
No, it's cool.
I know that the Somerset Rail Trust, whatever they call themselves, Rail and Trail Project. If you've come across that, I know that Ewan has. It's a group of people who've come together to kind of get all the old railway links linked up together as walkways and cycleways. So they've got a really active campaign going at the moment. They've been writing to all the MPs, district and county councillors. So you may have even had a letter yourself if you are one of those. Well worth getting in touch with and signing up to their Facebook. Ewan's going to say more about that. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to add, they've actually got so both sides, the Somerset Walking and Cycling Manifesto and the Rail to Trail Project, have got meetings coming up with the portfolio holder for transport, who is from Highbridge or Burnham, and I can't remember his name right now. So they've actually made a load of progress over the summer. So please do get in touch with them.
Yeah, they're actually, as you say, they've contacted some important people and had some good responses as well. And then Mendip, in their wisdom, which is really weird, they've appointed Greenways Cycle Routes Limited, which is an outfit started by a guy called John Grimshaw and Andrew Bown, and they were original people from Sustrans. John Grimshaw was one of the people who started Sustrans, and he's got his own little outfit now, and they've done the strawberry line and various other little bits of work. I think they're working on the Wye Valley at the moment, somewhere on a tunnel at the moment. So they've got a contract for a year with Mendip. I'm not sure when they start, but it's worth £60,000 to them. And I think the idea is to look at how we can develop all the old railway routes in the area and link cycle paths together and so on. So that's quite exciting. And I do intend to get in touch with them again and see what's going on as soon as they've started that. So lots going on. Froome's missing links. We got planning permission for our next little bit. In fact, I was having a meeting this morning with Sustrans and a few trustees, which is why I was late. But that's all quite exciting. You know, we started work down there at Watcombe Fields. It's going to take a while. We've got some more plans in the pipeline, but it's all kind of negotiations. But we're hoping by kind of summer, autumn next year, we should be able to unveil a few more meters of path potentially. It's like pulling teeth sometimes, but you know, eventually it feels like we're getting somewhere at long last.
Good. And on more kind of everyday matters, enabling matters, the bike jumble.
Oh yeah, well the bike jumble, definitely. That's the 12th of September. I spoke to Emma Parker, one of our staff members who's dealing with it at the moment. And they had the other day 36 bikes and 2 box loads of bits. That's on top of what they've already got. So I think we must be able
And
to...
so have these been found, donated, abandoned?
Donated, come from people's houses, that people didn't want them anymore, glad to get them out of the garage apparently. And we've got 2 more drop-off dates to go. I can't remember what they are exactly, but it's the 12th of September to actually come along. So there should be loads and loads and loads of kids' bikes, old bikes to pick away at. And all of that is, thankfully, in aid of Froome's Missing Links.
And yes, so the idea, much like Joe's market stall, but the idea is that there's just going to be bikes and bits and who knows what for sale, and you come along and sort of facilitated by the council.
Might remember. Yeah. So it was. We did it at the independent market last time.
Yeah,
about 500.
it's a good time to do it because lots of people have been clearing out their garages, I think, over lockdown. We were quite surprised. We thought, oh, everyone's cycling now. They're not going to want to give away their bikes. And we've had so many. And also, locally, for example, our bike shop has run out of bikes. So it's also a really good time to be selling it. So it's quite simple.
Yeah, you cannot. Bikes are the new, I don't know, blue roll. Things you can't get now. You just can't get a bike. It's very hard. Ewan, go on. Oh no, I think he's frozen.
I just want to comment
there you are.
a potential conflict on nuance that I. Oh yeah, sorry.
Go on.
I wanted to highlight a potential conflict on nuance that I hadn't realised until conversations with the rail to trail and walking and cycling people over the past week or so. That there is a question about language where in particular the horse riders and the disabled groups are concerned about walking and promoting walking and cycling and prefer active travel, which is why the government goes with active travel. Okay. Richard may be aware of this in that horse riding and disabled groups seem to be much more supportive of rail to trail, which is about connecting towns, but they put up a lot of resistance to the Somerset Walking and Cycling Manifesto in some places, with actually some quite aggressive tactics, I'd say, from the horse riding groups, not from the disabled groups. So just be aware of that in terms of language sensitivities.
Yeah, you're right, Ewan. We've already come across that. We're quite taken aback actually, because we call it a multi-user path, but we failed to mention horses or equestrian anywhere, and we got quite a barrage of, on the application, just obviously formulate letters saying I object because you're not allowing horses. It's not our intention at all, but it is. If you're planning anything like that, call it multi-use, active path. Make sure you emphasise that it's going to be for everybody, as long as conditions permit. So I had to fight quite a rear guard action with that. So they're quite a powerful lobby at the moment. Fair play, they want to be able to ride on trails as well, but they kind of almost scuppered the whole thing by just if they'd talked to us first, we would have altered our application and said, "Oh, you're quite right, we'll change the language." But they didn't. They just kind of did this big bash. So I had to publicly say we're not against horse riding or mobility scooters or anything, and we're okay. We got it through. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Good for you. Good for you. Listen, it's 4 minutes to 1, and I did say we'd finish relatively. I said we'd finish early, but it's been really too interesting talking to you all. So we'll finish a couple of minutes early if that's all right with you. Thank you all so much for coming along and for taking part. It's really lovely to see you. I hope you're all, and I'm glad you're all sort of fighting the good fight, but it's nice to catch up with each other in this forum. And I don't know if we have a date for another one, but I think we have an intention to do another one.
Yeah,
going,
I mean,
but not a date as yet.
Yeah, I think we'll send that round. But previously we had to do it every couple of months, so maybe the next one will be sort of November time or something. But.
Yeah, fantastic. And we'll stop the recording as we finish, but we'll circulate the kind of recording and the chat notes as well, so you can get all of the links. And then I think that will come from Anna. So if there's anything that was covered that we didn't note down, just maybe drop Anna a line. And yeah, we'll see you all in a couple of months, if not before. I'm sure our paths will cross at various other things.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you all for coming.